You've been gone a long time. Where did you go?
Hey, welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. And for this episode, we're going to be looking at the current storyline that's running through all of the Superman books, all the Superman-related books, which is Truth, or Before Truth, or Hard Truth, whichever one you like. That's pretty much where it's going to be at. Now, this is probably one of the worst Superman stories that I have seen in some time. And that is not a mean feat, because Grounded is still probably one of the worst Superman stories that was executed in some time. Now, Grounded had an excuse in that when it was being produced, Superman hadn't been in the books for a long time. He had been outside of his own book for about a year because of the whole World on Krypton thing, and that didn't play out too well. So when you had Grounded and you brought him back, he's walking across the country, and that's not really where he needs to be after being out of your own book. And it wasn't executed well. Straczynski, once he found out that there was going to be a reboot, just decided, look, if there's going to be a reboot and this storyline isn't going to matter, let me just focus on the Earth 1 series, which he wisely did, because that storyline, Grounded, didn't matter. Truth really makes me wonder, who is DC trying to market Superman to? Now, I mean, for me, Superman has a ceiling, I think, of about 80,000. About 80,000 people should be reading his books on a regular basis. But, had to take a break for a second, sorry. But he averages about 40,000. So that average, I think they're trying to say, well, look, we know he should be selling about here. We see Batman's numbers. He's, not as popular as Batman, but there's no reason he should be selling that much less, unless they're just happy for it. So honestly, I think they're trying to move the needle a little bit, trying to get some more readers in, see if they can, what can they do with this character right now? Because right now they have a lot of freedom thanks to that reboot, but not for much longer. So we get Truth. There's no reason for this storyline. Nothing has happened within the New 52 since this thing happened that we should expect this sort of storyline. Superman being depowered, him being outed. It really just comes from out of left field. Like someone just woke up one morning and said, hey, I got an idea, and let's just do this. Some of it is familiar because it's already been done before, not necessarily in this manner. We've already seen Lois Lane discover that Superman is Clark Kent. We saw that almost every issue during the Silver Age, as Lois was constantly trying to prove that Clark Kent was Superman. And even though every issue she would be shown that, no, Lois, I'm not Superman. You have to stop this. The very next issue, she would be right back at it. All right? So, it's not like it hasn't been done before. So Lois finding out isn't something that's actually new. Superman being depowered, no, that's not actually new either. Probably the biggest instance that we have him being depowered in the storyline was the Sandman Saga storyline written by Denny O'Neil during the Bronze Age, in which Superman wasn't necessarily depowered. Well, he was depowered. He lost a third of his powers, what they were saying, or maybe 50%, depending on where you're coming from. The problem is that Superman was infinitely powerful. So even if you marginalize him by 50%, half of infinity is still infinity. A lot of writers didn't go along with it. It wasn't until the John Byrne reboot that he was given power levels that were significantly less than what he had in the Bronze Age. The trouble with that, though, is that the things that he had to do were also significantly less than what he did in the Bronze Age. So while Byrne's Superman wasn't as strong as, say, the Bronze Age Superman, he didn't have to do the things that the Bronze Age Superman was doing anyway. So it really didn't matter. Superman was still as powerful as he needed to be. They lowered his power levels, but they also lowered what he had to do. So I keep those things in mind in terms of addressing this story, because a lot of this has already come before. The major problem with the storyline is that it's already started in other books like Action Comics and Superman, Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman, Superman. We've already seen what the ramifications are of him being outed and him being depowered. In Superman, where the story is actually supposed to be taking place, none of that has happened yet. So we're still being given the precursor to all of these things happening. Now, it's one thing you can put the cart before the horse, but they've decided to put something even before that. And again, as a reader, you look at this and you're like, at some point this is all supposed to mesh, but you've already got 3 books that are running off and telling their own story where Superman is depowered, his identity has been outed, and we don't necessarily see the significance of doing it in this way. So that's one mistake. Two, if you're going to depower him, it needs to mean something. If Superman is depowered and he's still getting shot and he's walking around, he's just plucking the bullets out of himself, he's like, oh, you know, I'm just not as bulletproof as I used to be. Well, bullet resistant is still bulletproof. If you're not dying from the bullets, you're still bulletproof. You're hurt? Okay, you know, he's Wolverine at that point. But the idea again is that if he's being depowered, it needs to mean something. We need to be shown why being depowered means something. If he's still getting the job done, if he's still rushing into the face of danger, saving the people, doing all of these things, even with a lower level of power, then what's the point in making him less powered? There's no point to it. You have to show why it is that being depowered means something, why it is that he needs to have these powers. If it doesn't matter one way or the other, then what was the purpose in doing it? So the setup for the story, and this is, again, I want to start with the Superman book, is that Superman is being blackmailed. He's being blackmailed by someone, and in finding that he's being blackmailed, he ends up being brought to this guy, new supervillain, what's his name? Hoarder Root, you know, some internet type thing. And the whole idea is, I guess, we're supposed to buy into this because we've all had our identity compromised at some point. You've had your email account phished, or somebody got a hold of your credit card. It doesn't really wash for Superman that much. I mean, it's Superman. What could you really do to compromise this guy? Oh, his secret identity. Well, it doesn't make a lot of sense because his secret identity only matters if he has loved ones he's trying to protect. Superman has no loved ones that he needs to protect with a secret identity in this New 52 universe. His parents are dead. He's not married or involved with Lois. He's involved with Wonder Woman. She does not need his protection. Jimmy Olsen already knows. That's it. There's no one else. So him needing the secret identity is more because of the mythological status of him needing it, and less because it makes any sort of rational sense. But hey, his secret identity is going to be compromised. That's pretty much the big draw to the whole thing. In the most recent issue, Superman has to face this new villain, and he once again decides that he needs to use this new power he has, the super flare. Since he has had this super flare, this is introduced back in Superman 38, he has used it every single issue. It's either we see him, the effects of him using it, or he's using it as if nothing else he could do could work. This is Superman. He needs to take out an entire complex. You would think Superman could do a, you know, sonic clap. You would think that Superman could just cause an earthquake. He's got the power to do these things. Or just basic heat vision. No, he needs to do a super flare. In doing the super flare, this being comes from behind him, and we can see somehow probably siphons off a good portion of his energies. Now this borrows right from one of the stories. Sorry. Now, this borrows from one of the stories that we've already seen, or one of the stories already mentioned, which was the Sandman saga, where the same exact thing happens. This creature comes from another universe and siphons off a good portion, well, you know, 50%, a third, depending what it is, of Superman's power. So in terms of originality, at least for a long-time reader, it's not there. I've seen it before. For a casual reader, maybe, and for a reader who just doesn't care about Superman, again, who cares? It's not a big deal. But that's the premise, and so we already know what's going to happen. If somebody's stolen it, he'll probably look to get it back, and we'll see if he gets it back in full, if he'll get it back in part, whatever it is. But in entertainment value, it's boring. It's been done before, and again, it's needless. This is not Superman who has been traveling and doing all of these wild, crazy things that we needed a storyline to show him being depowered, especially since in the other books, him being depowered doesn't mean anything. He's still doing the same type of stuff. The only thing that we are being shown is that for some reason, writers have a problem with Superman, even the people who have been on for a long period of time. The need to try to tap into the golden age aspect of Superman, that fixation with 1938 to 1940. That's it. Just 1938 to 1940, when he was leaping, okay, when he was running, when he was less powerful. Now, mind you, this is the first superhero ever. Superman, in terms of power, was still light years ahead of everyone else who was within the DC stable that came after him. Wonder Woman, Batman, The Flash, all the rest of them couldn't hold a candle to him, even with golden age level ability. So if you want to say that he's overpowered, that's like saying water is wet. Superman is just powerful. That's it, period. That's the way he was created, and he gets more powerful as time goes along. When you look back to that, they have this fixation with it. And I'm not 100% certain why, but it's of course, because of where the zeitgeist is right now. We want more thuggish, more brutish characters. Okay, that character, Superman in the Golden Age from 1938 to 1940 was definitely more of a, definitely more of a rough and tumble, more rough around the edges. But the one thing that he did not do, he never made himself the problem. Superman came in and solved the problem. In that very first issue where we see him coming in, he's trying to keep a man from being killed. And yes, he'll rip off a door. He'll march right into the room because the right thing to do was to get to the right person who could stay this man's execution. Okay, so he wasn't going to come over and get a court order to do that, not when the man's life was on the line. The door he rips off the hinges could always be replaced. We're not going to get this man's life back. So there's a big difference between that and what we see in some of the current issues. For instance, in Action Comics, Superman decides that he's going to put his body on the line for a bunch of protesters. Now, these protesters are out there for no reason other than him. They've decided, well, look, Superman, we support him, where everybody else seems to have turned their back on him, because once you lose your powers, that's when people are going to turn your back on you. It's worse than the X-Men, okay? The X-Men are feared because they have the powers. Superman, we hate you because you don't have the power any longer. It's a ludicrous send-up. It ignores everything that he's done for Metropolis and everything he's done for the people. But hey, we need to have some sort of conflict and angst coming from somewhere, right? So these people have decided to camp out. The police tell them, no, you can't camp out here. This is illegal. You got to go. No, hell no, we won't go. Superman's lives matter. Kryptonian lives matter. We're going to stay right here. Okay, it's a terrible setup because automatically it paints the police as, always evil. Of course, all the police, the evil cop is always white cop, has the sunglasses on, looking something straight out of the racist pamphlet. And that's the cop that's the cop, of course, who we're going to have to deal with. However, if you look at the whole scenario, you can't protest simply because you want to. You can't just squat someplace just because you want to. And their reason for doing it is to show Superman solidarity and support. Superman shows up and decides he's going to link himself up with chains and keep the police from moving the people off, which is ludicrous. What should he do? Tell the people, hey, I dig it. You support me. I dig it. You want to show that you are in solidarity with me. What should Superman do? Tell him to go home. I don't want anybody getting hurt over me. I don't want the police getting involved over me. There are plenty of ways that you can show your solidarity. Unfortunately, this isn't one of them. I appreciate it, but I'd really rather if everybody went home. I would rather know that everybody's safe. That's the mature thing to do. That's Superman in terms of character. We don't get that. Instead, we get him with chains over here, getting his face bashed in. So we don't get Superman, we get a tough guy. Okay, we get a guy, oh wow, look how tough he is because he can take a beating. He's still Superman. This is somebody who can still take a bullet, okay, pluck it out of his body and just keep walking. Being beaten in the face with a truncheon, even if these are weapons that they created to hurt him, doesn't matter. It's still Superman. Okay. So it's a wasted proposition, and where he really is supposed to excel is not just in power, but character. He should have the wisdom enough to see that, look, I need to get these people out of here. I'm the problem. I'm the reason why they're here. And the Golden Age Superman, for all of his rough and tumbleness, was never the problem. He never caused the problem. He came in to be a solution to the problem to help. Superman doesn't help. He just makes the situation worse. Well, those sequences right there, what we've recently seen in Superman 42, oh, almost forgot, Lois Lane. See, Lois Lane has sorted out that Superman is Clark Kent before. She's done it several times, which I stated earlier. And this we can see, this is probably one of the worst ways that she finds out. Clark decides that he just doesn't care about his secret identity. So instead of handling things in that issue where he could have done a bit more clandestinely or done some other options, he just throws himself into fighting, his clothes get tattered, and she ends up literally just ripping them off to see the S right there. Gee, I could have done that. I don't need to be an investigative reporter to do that. And there's somebody else there as well. So obviously she either knew who Superman was, or Superman just didn't care about preserving his identity whatsoever. He didn't use super breath to try to blow them back, get some distance from everybody. The secret identity is not important to this character. He displays it in so many different instances. And in this story, of course it can't be important for Superman to maintain it, because we need to find some way to get that big reveal out for Lois, and in the fastest, and it also seems the most stupid way possible, in order for her to suss it out. So now he's revealed, but again, what does it matter? He has no connection to Lois Lane truly in this universe. They're not dating, okay? They're barely friends in terms of their interaction. So when she finds out, you know, she says, you know, you've been lying, you've been this, but you guys have really spent almost no time together. No time together whatsoever. He told Jimmy before her because he spent more time with Jimmy. Okay, so Jimmy, I could see having a little bit of adverse reaction. The other thing is that Superman also wants to say, well, hey, look, I'm doing this because I wanted to protect people. Lois's reaction tends to be the cynical one at this point. Oh, I'm always going to react adversely because this guy was keeping a secret. Well, in this case, it fits because his justification for wanting to be Clark Kent is that he just wants to do it. That's it. There's no other reason. It's not that he was raised by human beings. Okay? It's not that he feels a connection to people and he can only experience that connection fully as Clark in certain instances. It's not that he wants to try, okay, to walk in the shoes of the common man as much as possible. No, I just do. This is the writing that we're getting from this guy, okay? There's so little thought into it and so little process into it. But hey, got to sell the book somehow. And that is the one thing that really stays on my mind. Who are they marketing this to? If you're a longtime reader like myself, you've seen this before and none of this makes sense. All right, this right over here doesn't make any sense to me because I've seen enough Superman stories. I've read enough Superman stories, not to become cynical, but to become knowledgeable, okay, of what's happened, what's worked, why it's worked, and what hasn't worked, and why it's failed. And this is on the path to failure. But again, who are you marketing this to? If it's a long-time reader like me, no, I never asked for this. I don't really need this. I don't want this. If it's a casual reader, maybe you could bring in a casual reader with this. They've never seen this before, and they may look at it like, oh wow, this is new, this is fresh. But how long are they going to stay with this? Superman has outed himself to everyone. How long are you going to be able to maintain that? Because again, the marquee character that you have here has a certain mythos, and part of those mythos involves Clark Kent. If he can't be Clark Kent anymore, then he's just Superman full-time. And if he's Superman full-time, we don't need Lois anymore. We don't need Jimmy. We don't need the Daily Planet. We sure as heck don't need Perry White. So what do you do then? You have your marquee character, but you've totally undercut his entire mythology. I don't think they want to do that. I think they would definitely want to throw in some shock and awe rather than entertaining people and telling good stories. But you can only do that for so long before people become inured to it. If you're somebody and you don't like Superman, you hate Superman, hey, this is your story. Superman is outed. Okay, he's going to be weakened. We're going to see him getting beat up for months right now. And this, yeah, with orgasmic glee, you could come over here and consume this. The only logical thing, however, though, is if you don't like Superman, you were never going to buy his book in the first place. So these changes can't be for you. Is this a story that's just being written because some editorial mandate came down? That somebody decided this would be a good idea? No, the story really feels very much like a placeholder. Like we need something for right now until whatever comes over here. And again, because the reboot is still relatively new, it's 4 years, it's not fresh. Okay, but the situations are still new enough that you could actually get away with this and maybe do something. However, I mean, we've got other books where Superman is running around fully powered. He's running around fully powered in the Justice League. He's running around fully powered in Justice League of America. To complicate matters even more, Superman, the pre-Flashpoint Superman, the Superman that a lot of people still consider the real Superman, has his own book coming out in the autumn. And in that book, he's going to be placed on the DC Earth proper with this other guy. Yeah, this one over here who's been outed, who's depowered. Okay, it'll be Superman, Lois Lane, and his 9-year-old son. They've been on the planet for 9 years now, working behind the scenes in order to get things done. It has to be one of the worst ideas, okay, that I've seen involving Superman, with the exception of what we see right now going on in Truth. I mean, it's like, it's mind-boggling to think what it is that these guys are trying to do. DC is one of the biggest people terms where they don't want to dilute their brand. They don't want a Superman in the movies, and then have a Superman television show because they don't want people getting confused. But in the comics, it seems they have no problem. Let's confuse the hell out of people when it gets right down to it. Superman's going to be running around depowered, but at the same time, there's going to be Superman who's fully powered, working behind the scenes to keep things together. And again, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, if this Superman is here, there's a lot of work they could actually do together. You would think he would have introduced himself right now. But then, of course, we'll get that malarkey about, I don't want to interfere with his destiny, you know, all that Smallville nut stuff. So at the end of the day, look, it's not 100%, it's nowhere near finished truth. And even though it looks like scat on toast and smells like it, these type of stories still have to play out. Not because I like the foresight to see what's going to happen, but I think a lot of people really need to get a good whiff of what poo smells like so they can honestly see, look, this was bad, and we don't necessarily want to smell this again. That's the reason why scat stinks. So when you smell it, you don't ever want to go back near it again. Trouble is, DC has been serving up scat for a very, very long time, and people just keep seeming to go back. Their memory retention just doesn't seem to be it. Hopefully, this will be the scat. This will be the poo that finally gets it done. Well, hey, that's me for right now. We look forward to seeing you again. Please give us a like, give us a comment. From the Fortress of Solitude, Calvin Ellis. We'll see you later.